The ancestors of Pueblo Indians and descendants of Spanish settlers farmed and hunted in Los Alamos, New Mexico, centuries before the United States Army Corps of Engineers established the Atomic Bomb Research Laboratory there in 1943. Indian and Hispanic communities have survived for centuries in northern New Mexico. Many residents of these traditional communities joined people brought to Los Alamos from throughout the world to work for the project which ended World War II and initiated the atomic age. Beginning in the late 1930s, refugee scientists fleeing Nazi persecution told American scientists and President Roosevelt that the Nazis' atomic bomb research was more advanced than the Allied effort. At the same time, British scientists and Winston Churchill were urging the American government to give atomic bomb research top priority in the desperate hope that the Allies could produce an atomic bomb before the Nazis.
You, of course, have no idea what it was like in that time, and Mr. Hitler, what he was doing. And I mean, it was really a horrible thing. And one just did absolutely everything necessary. And it seemed likely that the Germans were working on it and would be ahead of us. So it really was a race. So. In 1943, the defeat of Hitler would justify practically anything. So I was a pacifist before the war, and I put that aside and said, I'll work on this, it's necessary.
In September of 1942, General Leslie R. Groves of the United States Army Corps of Engineers was appointed military director of the Manhattan Project, which had top priority and a mandate to produce an atomic weapon. Within a very brief time, the Manhattan Project included 10 research and production sites in the United States. General Groves coordinated the administration and, in several cases, the construction of these research and production sites. Having top priority meant that Los Alamos could command all rare or rationed materials: steel, aluminum, magnesium. General Groves spent $2 billion to ensure that people working on the Manhattan Project could produce an atomic bomb as quickly as possible. An immediate priority was securing an isolated site for scientific design work on this urgently needed secret weapon. In October of 1942, General Groves authorized Major Dudley of the newly formed Manhattan Engineer District to locate a site which was inland over 200 miles with connections to railroads, roads, and an airport. Dudley recommended Jemez Springs, New Mexico. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the civilian scientific director of the Atomic Bomb Laboratory, suggested Los Alamos, which he knew because his family owned a ranch in the nearby Pecos Mountains. Groves approved the choice, but Los Alamos was already inhabited.
My parents had the land as far as I can remember. They used to come up in the summer. They didn't spend the time year-round. It was only during the summer. And they used to raise pinto beans, corn, and wheat.
Here at Los Alamos, it was temporal farming. So therefore, beans was really the main crop that our family and all the other families planted here. It was an important crop because it was a cash crop that was sold immediately after the harvest.
It used to take us probably a day to come in the covered wagon. We used to come in the covered wagon. And I remember coming up, it's like seeing the covered wagon in the movies now. We used to bring our cow, and we used to ride the horses.
We picked a load of beans to put in the truck to take home as the fresh beans, the first of the year. The next morning we got up early to go back home, and overnight there was a sentry that had been stationed at the bottom of the Los Alamos Canyon, right by the little bridge that used to be there 50 years ago. And he stopped us and asked us where we were coming from. And so my dad told him we were coming from our farm. And so he asked him how he was there or why he was there. And the man didn't really seem to know why he was there. He was merely there because he got a job to be a sentry. And we came to Los Alamos and we saw a few more guards in different parts, and they were at all approaches to the Los Alamos area.
The first part of November, why Colonel Cole, Major Morgan, Russell B. Osborne, who was the chief of the guards in Albuquerque, drove to Los Alamos and picked me up. And we came up here to Los Alamos to survey the necessary guards that we needed to maintain this place. It was decided to hire civilian guards and maintain the 24-hour post.
In addition to the 23 homesteads owned mostly by local Hispanic families, the Los Alamos Ranch School, an elite prep school in a wilderness setting, operated year-round in Los Alamos. The school combined a demanding academic curriculum with a vigorous outdoor life, including camping, horseback riding, athletics, and community service. As the United States Army Corps of Engineers advanced personnel arrived, both the homesteaders and the Los Alamos Ranch School staff learned that they would have to leave their mesa.
Dearest Mother, it looks as though the worst were coming to the worst rapidly. This is confidential because we don't know any details yet, and I wanted to drop a line to you this morning. So if I phone you and say something like, "The die is cast," you'll know what's up. Army still hasn't said what they're planning to use it for. Perhaps they'll lay down their cards this morning. Perhaps it'll be still a military secret. Anyway, it's evident that this chapter in our lives is rapidly closing.
During the last 2 months of 1942 and in the early months of 1943, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers oversaw the initial construction of housing, roads, and laboratories in Los Alamos.
Most people perhaps don't realize it anymore, but Chicago is really the birthplace of the atomic age.
In December of 1942, Enrico Fermi achieved the first self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction. His reactor was a graphite pile which he built in a squash court under Stagg Field Football Stadium at the University of Chicago.
Understood fully what we were doing at Chicago, the concept of a self-sustaining chain reaction being controlled.
There I received a telegram from Henry DeWolf Smythe at Princeton University offering me a job doing research in the laboratory. My immediate boss was Robert R. Wilson, and he took me into what I can assure you seemed to me like an 1880s office. It seemed so old and musty, and Bob Wilson sat at the desk and sat me at the side of the desk and said, what we are trying to do is to separate the isotopes of uranium so that we can make an atomic bomb. And I was quite surprised, and I, in my perhaps youthful enthusiasm, said to him, well, I remember reading about that when I was 11 years old and 12 years old. I was quite a devotee of science fiction at that time and was reading amazing stories.
When the Los Alamos Ranch School staff left in February of 1943, the United States Army Corps of Engineers immediately established Manhattan Project functions in Los Alamos Ranch School structures. In April of 1943, the civilian scientists began arriving in Los Alamos.
Well, Oppenheimer was my boss in the beginning. He recruited me and sent me out here very early to essentially as a spy to see what was getting done. Then he had a problem with the procurement department. There were train loads of equipment coming here and nobody to receive them and do something with them. said that if I would do that for a few months until Mitchell got here, he would promise to get me the very best job in the lab for teaching me what I was going to use later. And he did that. And John Williams and I toured the technical areas, looking at the various laboratory buildings as they were being put up to see what kinds of mistakes, or, well, not necessarily mistakes, but just things that had been forgotten because it was being done so very rapidly. Then there was nothing at Los Alamos in the way of any laboratories finished, and no housing except the housing that was here for the school. So every day we continued to stay in Santa Fe, and every day we would come up to Los Alamos. During this period, Hugh Bradner spent his time lining up housing for people to stay at in various dude ranches and at the Bandolier.
Some of us who had accepted didn't have enough money to make the trip. And so Feynman, who had some savings, postal savings, loaned some of us, among them, I was one. He loaned me $100, and he loaned others for presumably about the same amount, so they could make the trip from Princeton to Los Alamos.
And then we were moved to Rancho Ancon, which was in the Nambe Valley, because our house wasn't ready yet. And we had the 3 families there, and it was a beautiful life. It was a lovely introduction to New Mexico.
But the military came shortly after, probably early in 1943. And the only approach, there were only 2 approaches coming to Los Alamos. It was through Española or through El Rancho. And so the convoy came through El Rancho. It's a military detachment. And the people who were there were wondering why there was a deployment of troops coming in this direction when all the young boys of the valley were overseas somewhere already fighting the war.
Because of the strict security measures involving Los Alamos, personnel arriving from all over the United States were told nothing about their destination other than to report to 109 East Palace Avenue in Santa Fe. Dorothy McKibben managed that office single-handedly.
I was fortunate enough that I had my own vehicle with me, and I was allowed to bring my own vehicle out. Never having driven in the West before, I had an interesting experience coming into Santa Fe. Knowing that it was the capital of New Mexico, I expected to see a fairly large town, and so as I drove through the square and kept on going looking for the main part of town, I found myself out on the desert again. So I turned around and came back, and I finally pulled into a service station right off the square, and I asked where downtown Santa Fe was. And the guy says, you're in it, this is it. And I said, what, do you mean that this capital of New Mexico, this is the town? He said, yes, that's right. So I said, okay, do you have a telephone? That's when I called Dorothy McKibben and reported in, and she said, well, where are you? And I told her, and she said, oh, yeah, she said, I see you. She was right across the square from where I had stopped. So once I got there, I, of course, started asking Dorothy questions about, well, what was it? What were we doing? And I got nothing but a lot of pleasantries, you know. She was such a wonderful person.
And it was an exciting blend of old world customs. For instance, the elderly Spanish ladies wore black clothes down to the ankle and reboses. And they all spoke Spanish, of course. And you'd meet them in groups. Almost everyone on the street spoke Spanish. It was like being in a foreign country. And against that, there were fireplaces in practically every store in town. And you'd walk into a store, and here would be a corner fireplace with a little Indian sticks up against the back wall of the fireplace, you know, and the lovely, lovely, wonderful smell of pinon all over everything. in on a cloudy day and